It's a Wonderful Life is quite possibly the best Christmas film ever made. However, it wasn't always considered in that regard, or even considered as a Christmas film, or even a good film for that matter. The story of the film begins with a Christmas card. In 1939, Philip Van Doren Stern, an expert on the American Civil War, began writing a short story called The Greatest Gift, which was about a man who wished he'd never been born. After witnessing this alternate reality, he realizes his life is the greatest gift he has, and wants to return to it. Stern originally wrote this and gave 200 copies away to friends as Christmas presents. In 1944, the story was first published as a book and then as a short story in Good Housekeeping magazine and Reader's Scope. RKO Pictures producer David Hempstead showed the story to Cary Grant, who became interested in playing the main character, thus leading to RKO's purchase of the story's film rights for $10,000. A year later, in 1945, Frank Capra and his production company, Liberty Films, bought the rights to the story, which I think is a major turning point in the film's production. As Capra had a significant and unique approach to the films he made, he is quoted as saying, "My films must let every man, woman, and child know that God loves them, that I love them, and that peace and salvation will become a reality only when they all learn to love each other." I think this shines through It's a Wonderful Life, and is possibly the greatest reason why it is so treasured today, as the film wasn't always so beloved.
I want a big one.
The process of casting the film is still in contention today, as a large number of influential actors at the time were considered for not only the main characters, but for the side characters as well. Jimmy Stewart, who eventually brought George Bailey to life, is often considered as Frank Capra's first choice. However, Stewart's friend Henry Fonda was also in the running. Mary was originally offered to Capra veteran Jean Arthur, but she couldn't make the picture due to a prior commitment to a Broadway show. Other legendary actresses like Olivia de Havilland and Ginger Rogers were offered the role, but it eventually went to Donna Reed. The role of Mr. Potter was given to legendary actor Lionel Barrymore, who played Ebenezer Scrooge in famous radio versions of A Christmas Carol during the 1940s, which makes complete sense for the character of Mr. Potter, the meanest and richest man in the county. Other actors like Charles Bickford, Vincent Price, and even Thomas Mitchell, who eventually played Uncle Billy, were in the running. Thomas Mitchell has an interesting connection to me in that he went to high school with my great-grandfather at St. Patrick's High School in Elizabeth, New Jersey, and even showed his Irish colors singing My Wild Irish Rose in the famous scene where he screams, I'm all right, which actually happened. Mitchell really fell into something off screen. The production work on It's a Wonderful Life is truly an amazing story all by itself. The film was shot at the RKO Pictures lot, where it covered 4 acres, was assembled from 3 different parts. The main street that George famously runs down stretched 300 yards, a working bank set, and even allowed cats and dogs and pigeons to roam the set to make Bedford Falls feel real. Even though the set was brilliantly planned and set up, RKO's movie ranch was razed to the ground in 1954, and the only 2 locations that survive are the pool, which was shot at Beverly Hills High School, which still works today, and the house that the Martinis moved into. Russell Shearman and RKO's special effects department was recognized for their special effects in the film, as they developed a new method of simulating falling snow on the set. Previously, films used painted cornflakes for snow, resulting in a loud crunch, which also led to unintelligible dialogue. Shearman used a compound of water, soap flakes, foamite, and sugar. Now that we know the film's backstory, let's get into It's a Wonderful Life.
George is a good guy. Give him a break, God.
I love him, dear Lord. Watch over him tonight.
Please, God, something's the matter with Daddy. Please bring Daddy back.
It's a Wonderful Life begins with Christmas Eve prayers for one man, our main character, George Bailey, who throughout his whole life has sacrificed everything he has ever wanted so that others could be happy. However, in these prayers, we find out that George is in trouble. They are answered as Angel's second class, Clarence Oddbody, will be sent down to Earth to be George's guardian angel. Clarence has shown George's life as a way of making sure he knows who George Bailey is before he tries to convince George not to commit suicide, which is a brilliant way to learn about the main character of the film from a filmmaking standpoint, as it cements the character's actions and makes us feel not only connected to George, but to the people he has impacted. We learn about George's heroism in saving his kid brother Harry, the development of his relationship with the love of his life, Mary, his constant kindness and selflessness when it comes to helping his family and friends, and the impact of his father's business, the Bailey Building and Loan, and his father's death.
You can hire anyone you like. Dr. Cameron, let's get this thing straight. I'm leaving right now. I'm going to school. This is my last chance. Uncle Billy here. He's your man.
But George, they'll vote with Potter otherwise.
I know. He didn't go.
After Clarence is brought up to speed, we return to Christmas Eve, where George is handing out newspapers as Harry won the Congressional Medal of Honor for his heroism in World War II. We then see Uncle Billy at the bank, where he bumps into old Mr. Potter, who accidentally takes and then purposefully steals $8,000 of the building and loan's money, unbeknownst to Uncle Billy. Uncle Billy soon confesses this loss to George. As per his character, George helps look for the money, but with no luck. Uncle Billy and George could go to jail, causing George to go into a downward spiral, so much so he goes to Mr. Potter, the man that possibly drove his own father to his grave, for his help in his time of need. Instead, Mr. Potter calls the police.
$500 equity in a life insurance policy. You're worth more dead than alive.
George goes to drink in his friend Martini's bar and prays to God to show him the way through all of this. After crashing his car, he goes to the town's bridge, and just as he is about to end his life, Clarence jumps in and thus saves George. As George would help anyone, he jumps in after to save Clarence. After this, we see Clarence confess that he is an angel sent to help. George wishes he'd never been born. For the last act of the film, we see George going through an alternate reality in which everyone he's impacted throughout his life had their life drastically changed.
You've got your wish. You've never been bored. No worries, no obligations, no $8,000 to get, no Potter looking for you with a sheriff.
Say something else in that ear.
Sure, you can hear out of it.
What's the doggone thing? I haven't heard anything out of that ear since it was a kid.
Bedford Falls is now turned upside down as Mr. Gower went to jail and become a drunk as he poisoned the sickly child at the beginning of the film. The town's name is now Pottersville, after Mr. Potter, who runs the town. Uncle Billy went to the madhouse. George's own mother doesn't even recognize him. And worst of all, Mary never married, and Harry never became the war hero, saving all of those men on that transport. George is utterly shaken to the core and realizes that he truly had a wonderful life, and wants to go back to it immediately, praying for his life back. As he returns, George is grateful and jubilant for all the elements in his life. Then we see Mary come through the front door. Soon the whole town is in the Bailey's house, as Mary went out and recruited the town to help George in his time of need. Clarence earns his wings, and all live happily ever after. It's a Wonderful Life has made a huge impact on my life since I first saw it in high school around Christmas Day 10 years ago. It held me captive. I couldn't look away from the screen. Every single time I've seen it since then, there's something new that I discover, or my ideas change about the film. The film had a huge impact as the story hit home. It really hit me as I understood George Bailey's struggle of doing everything to make others feel happy, while at times feeling so low that you didn't think that there was a way out, and wishing that you'd never been born, as I was often bullied in high school in my younger years. And I remember crying happy tears by the magnificent end of the film. It's a Wonderful Life introduced me to the idea of how we never truly know how much of an impact we have on those we interact with on a daily basis, that no man is truly alone, and of course, no man is a failure who has friends. Thank you for watching this series. I really enjoyed making these videos and can't wait to do it next year. Merry Christmas!